Why does everyone feel so tired all the time? You wake up in the morning, and even after a full night's sleep, your body feels heavy, your mind foggy, and your energy just isn't there. You go through the motions: work, school, errands, scrolling on your phone, but somehow it never feels like enough. Every day feels like a struggle to keep going, and you wonder if something is wrong with you. The truth is, this exhaustion isn't just in your head. It's everywhere. People today are more drained than ever before, and it's not just about how much sleep we get. Even our grandparents, the ones who worked long hours on farms or in factories, seem to have a different kind of energy. They could get up at dawn, work hard all day, and still have the strength to cook, garden, and play with their kids. That kind of vitality feels almost impossible now. Part of the problem is the way we live. Phones beep and buzz constantly. Work piles up and never seems to end. We're always multitasking, switching between apps, emails, messages, and social media. Our brains are running nonstop, and we rarely give them a moment to rest. It's like trying to run a car engine 24/7 without ever letting it cool down. Eventually, it wears out. But the worst part is that many of us don't realize why we're so tired. Doctors might tell us we're healthy. Friends might say we're just lazy or stressed. Yet the real reason behind this exhaustion is more hidden and more complicated than it seems. It's not just lack of sleep or poor diet. It's the way modern life pushes us to keep going, always connected, always on, leaving our bodies and minds constantly drained. You might feel frustrated, confused, even a little hopeless, asking yourself, why can't I feel rested? Why is my energy always low? These are questions many people carry silently every day. And that feeling of being stuck in a fog, of moving through life without real energy, is something almost everyone can relate to. This constant tiredness is a shared struggle, but it also sets the stage for a surprising truth. While the modern lifestyle drains us, there are ways to reclaim energy and feel alive again. There are practices that protect and restore energy in ways most of us never consider. And that's exactly what we're going to explore next. While the rest of the world seems trapped in endless exhaustion, there's a place where energy has been preserved for centuries: Japan. It's not that people there work less. They work hard, sometimes extremely hard, but somehow they manage to maintain a vitality that many of us can only dream of. The secret lies in ancient practices passed down from samurai warriors that teach the art of protecting and restoring energy. The samurai were not just fighters. They were masters of focus, endurance, and calm in the midst of chaos. They understood something essential. Energy is not something you simply have more of. It's something you manage, cultivate, and protect. And what modern science is only now beginning to prove is that these methods really work. In Japan today, doctors and scientists still study these ancient practices. One such expert is Dr. Yuki, a specialist in integrative medicine. She knows how the modern brain is constantly bombarded by information and stimulation, and she has helped people tap into energy-restoring habits that have been around for centuries. Through her work, she teaches 3 powerful practices that anyone can use to reclaim vitality: Seijaku, the art of active stillness; Shinrin-yoku, which translates to forest bathing; and Inemuri, the art of strategic napping. Seijaku is not meditation or sleep, though it may look a little like both. It's a way to give the brain the silence it rarely experiences in our noisy world. Just a few minutes a day can reset mental energy and clear the mind. Shinrin-yoku is about connecting with nature, not through intense exercise, but by simply being in a forest, absorbing the sounds, smells, and sights. Studies show it lowers stress hormones, strengthens the immune system, and helps your brain recover from the constant flood of digital information. Finally, Inemuri is the Japanese approach to short, strategic naps. These power naps restore alertness and creativity without pulling you into deep sleep, letting your energy recharge efficiently in the middle of the day. Together, these 3 practices form a blueprint for energy that is surprisingly simple, yet profoundly effective. They've been honed over centuries, tested by warriors, and now verified by modern neuroscience. While most of us keep reaching for coffee or energy drinks to stay awake, these methods focus on conserving and restoring what we already have. And that brings us to Caleb, a man who was living just like many of us, tired, overworked, and drained, but who discovered the transformative power of these Japanese practices. His story shows exactly how Seijaku, Shinrin-yoku, and Inemuri can change a life. Caleb was 35 years old, married, and seemed to have it all. On paper, his life looked successful: steady job, stable marriage, and the routines most people would envy. But underneath that surface, he felt completely drained. Every day felt like a battle just to keep moving. He woke up tired, worked hard, tried to train at the gym, and went home exhausted, repeating the cycle without any relief. Mornings were especially tough. Even after 8 hours of sleep, he felt like he had barely rested. His first moments awake were spent scrolling through messages and emails, bombarding his brain before he'd even left the bed. By the time he arrived at work, his mind was already foggy. He was a systems analyst, spending hours in front of a screen, yet he struggled to focus, make decisions, or feel engaged. Tasks that should have been simple felt impossible. Exercise didn't help as much as it used to. Going to the gym was no longer a way to recharge. It was a chore that required dragging himself across invisible mountains. His body had the strength, but his willpower and mental energy were gone. Each rep, each step, each set felt heavier than the last. And it wasn't just work or workouts. At home, the exhaustion seeped into the most important parts of his life. His wife, Clarice, had been with him for 8 years, and they had been trying to start a family for 2. But Caleb's fatigue made it hard to connect. He loved her deeply, but coming home meant collapsing on the couch, mind numb, phone in hand, scrolling endlessly. Dinner conversations were met with monosyllabic answers, and moments that should have been shared felt empty. Clarice noticed the change. She watched him drift further away, emotionally unavailable, a shadow of the man she knew. She tried to reach him gently at first, offering small suggestions for breaks or a short trip, hoping he would take her words to heart. But Caleb always had an excuse. Work was busy, he said. Things would get better next week. He promised he'd rest, but the promise never became reality. Until one evening, Clarice could no longer stay silent. She sat next to him on the sofa, took his phone from his hands, and said something he would never forget, a confrontation that would change the direction of his life. That night, the living room was quiet except for the soft hum of the TV. Clarice sat down beside Caleb on the sofa and gently took the phone from his hands. She looked at him with a mix of worry and determination. "Caleb," she said softly, "I can't keep watching you like this anymore." He avoided her eyes, unsure how to respond. "What do you mean?" he asked quietly, almost defensive. Clarice took a deep breath. "You're always tired. You're here physically, but not really present. You don't have the energy for us, for conversation, for anything that matters. I'm scared for our future. We want a child. But how can we do that if you barely have energy to take care of yourself?" Her words hit Caleb harder than he expected. Deep down, he knew she was right. The fatigue wasn't just exhaustion. It was an emptiness that had been growing for years. He had tried to ignore it, blaming long workdays, busy schedules, or the occasional rough week. But now, hearing Clarice say it aloud, he could no longer hide from the truth. "I don't know what's wrong with me," he admitted, his voice breaking slightly. "I've tried everything, sleeping, eating right, working out, but nothing works. I feel empty." Clarice reached for his hand, squeezing it tightly. "Then maybe it's time to look for help. Not just for yourself, but for us. You don't have to figure this out alone." Caleb looked at her, feeling a mixture of fear and relief. Fear, because he wasn't sure what kind of help would work. Relief, because someone finally understood the depth of his struggle. He nodded slowly. "Okay," he whispered. "I'll do it. I'll try something." For the first time in months, there was a sense of hope in the room. The weight of unspoken exhaustion began to lift slightly, replaced by the possibility of change. They talked a little longer that night, not about work or chores, but about what might come next, and for the first time, Caleb felt a spark of clarity. The next step was clear. He needed guidance from someone who understood energy and restoration, someone like Dr. Yuki, the Japanese specialist who could teach him how to regain the vitality he had lost. 2 weeks later, Caleb found himself sitting in a sleek, minimal medical clinic. The waiting room was quiet, with soft sunlight filtering through the blinds. He glanced around, taking in the calm environment, so different from the chaos of his office. When it was his turn, he walked into Dr. Yuki's office, feeling a mix of curiosity and nervousness. Dr. Yuki, a Japanese woman with gray hair tied neatly at the back, greeted him with a warm smile. She wasn't behind a cluttered desk filled with papers. Instead, she was sitting in a comfortable chair, holding a cup of tea. "Sit, Caleb," she said. "Would you like some tea?" He nodded, accepting the cup, unsure what to expect. Unlike previous visits to other doctors, Dr. Yuki didn't ask about symptoms first. She didn't reach for his chart. Instead, she asked him about life, his daily routines, his work, his sleep, even how he spent his free time. "You've had blood tests, right? Thyroid, vitamins, everything normal?" she asked gently. Caleb nodded again. "Good. Now tell me, when was the last time you truly felt rested?" Caleb hesitated. He thought hard, but nothing came to mind. Years had passed since he remembered feeling fully relaxed. "I don't know," he admitted. Dr. Yuki nodded knowingly, as if she had expected that answer. "And when was the last time you did absolutely nothing? No phone, no music, no screens, just silence and yourself?" Caleb laughed awkwardly. "Never," he said. "I can't remember a time like that." "Exactly," Dr. Yuki replied. "This is the problem. Modern life bombards us constantly. We wake up to notifications, work in front of screens, and even our rest is filled with more stimulation. Your brain never truly stops. You think you're resting, but you aren't." She leaned back, letting him absorb the words. Caleb felt a strange mix of frustration and relief. Frustration that this had been going on for so long, relief that someone finally understood. Then Dr. Yuki stood and walked to a bookshelf, pulling out an old, well-worn book. She opened it to a marked page. "Have you ever heard of the samurai?" she asked. Caleb nodded. "Yes, Japanese warriors." "Correct," she said. "But they weren't just fighters. They were masters of energy. They had ways to stay alert, focused, and strong without burning out. And these are the same practices I want to teach you, ancient wisdom that modern science now confirms." She smiled at him knowingly. These practices are called Seijaku, Shinrin-yoku, and Inemuri, and they can completely change how you use and restore your energy. Dr. Yuki gestured for Caleb to sit back down, settling comfortably in her chair. "Caleb," she said gently, "let me ask you something important. Do you think your problem needs more medicine, more vitamins, or stimulants like caffeine?" Caleb shook his head. "I've tried all of that," he admitted. "Nothing really works." "Exactly," she replied. "Energy isn't something you can force with pills or drinks. It's something you cultivate. It's something you manage, conserve, and restore." She picked up the book she had pulled from the shelf earlier and flipped to a page with careful notes. "The samurai understood this," she continued. "They knew that wasting energy on unnecessary tension or distractions would leave them exhausted in moments that mattered most. And they had 3 key practices to prevent that from happening." Caleb leaned in, curious. 3 practices? "Yes," Dr. Yuki said, her tone steady, calm, but full of authority. "The first is called Seijaku. It is the art of active stillness. It is not meditation and it is not sleep. It is a state where your brain can truly rest while you remain alert and present. This is the foundation. Without it, nothing else works as effectively." She continued, "The second practice is Shinrin-yoku, which means forest bathing. It is the Japanese way of spending intentional time in nature. You don't need to hike or exercise. It is simply being there, observing, breathing, and letting your senses absorb the natural environment. Research in Japan shows that just 2 hours in a forest can lower cortisol, improve immune function, and restore attention that has been drained by screens and overstimulation. And the third, Caleb asked, eager to understand. Inemuri, she said, smiling, the art of strategic napping. Short naps, 10 to 20 minutes, help your brain reset without falling into deep sleep. Science confirms that these power naps improve alertness, memory, and creativity. The samurai used this too. They didn't see rest as laziness. They saw it as preparation and recovery. When used correctly, these 3 practices completely change your energy levels, your focus, and your ability to live fully. Caleb sat quietly, absorbing everything. It sounded so simple, yet so different from anything he had ever tried. The idea of resting deliberately, walking in nature, and napping strategically felt almost revolutionary. Dr. Yuki looked at him seriously. I want you to start with the first one tomorrow morning. Seijaku, 10 minutes right after you wake up. No phone, no music, no distractions. Just you and the silence. This is where your brain begins its reset. And with that, Caleb's first step into a new way of life was ready. Seijaku, the practice that would teach him how to truly conserve and restore his energy. Caleb woke up the next morning with a mix of curiosity and skepticism. Dr. Yuki had told him to practice Seijaku, the art of active stillness, but he wasn't entirely sure what that meant. He poured himself a cup of tea, sat on a cushion, and tried to quiet his mind. At first, it felt impossible. Thoughts kept rushing in, emails, meetings, tasks, worries about home. His brain felt like a computer with too many tabs open, each one screaming for attention. Dr. Yuki had explained it this way: the brain is like RAM on a computer. When too many programs run at once, everything slows down. Seijaku is the process of closing unnecessary programs, giving the system time to reset, and freeing up mental space. It isn't about emptying the mind completely. It's about noticing the noise, letting it settle, and allowing your attention to focus on being present. Caleb tried. He sat quietly, paying attention to his breathing, feeling the rise and fall of his chest. He noticed tension in his shoulders and slowly relaxed them. At first, 5 minutes felt like hours. He wanted to check his phone, but he resisted. After about 10 minutes, a strange calmness washed over him. His thoughts didn't disappear, but they no longer demanded immediate attention. Science backs this up, Dr. Yuki had said. Studies show that even short periods of mindful stillness can reduce stress hormones, improve focus, and restore cognitive energy. Active stillness trains the brain to recover without needing sleep or caffeine. Caleb could feel it already. The fog that usually clouded his mornings began to lift, replaced by clarity and a sense of control. By the end of the session, he realized something important. It wasn't about doing nothing. It was about doing nothing in the right way. 10 minutes of intentional stillness had more effect on his alertness than a whole hour of distracted activity. He felt lighter, sharper, and even a little excited for the day ahead, a feeling he hadn't had in years. Caleb also noticed a subtle emotional shift. The frustration and impatience that usually greeted him in the morning were softened. He could approach tasks with more patience, and even small challenges felt manageable instead of overwhelming. The experience was simple, yet powerful, a small daily habit that could, over time, restore the energy modern life had stolen. With Seijaku mastered, even in these first tentative steps, Caleb was ready to move on to the second practice, Shinrin-yoku, the forest bathing that promised to reconnect him with nature and recharge his energy in a completely different way. The following weekend, Caleb decided to try Shinrin-yoku, the practice Dr. Yuki had described as forest bathing. He drove to a nearby park, surrounded by towering trees and winding paths, unsure what to expect. Unlike a hike or a workout, this wasn't about movement or exercise. He was simply meant to walk slowly, breathe deeply, and notice the environment around him. At first, it felt awkward. His mind kept jumping to emails, deadlines, and errands. But he reminded himself of Dr. Yuki's instructions. No rushing, no checking the phone, just noticing the sights, sounds, and smells of nature. As he walked deeper into the green, he started to hear the rustling leaves, the distant chirp of birds, and the soft crunch of pine needles underfoot. The air smelled crisp, earthy, and alive. Gradually, his tension began to ease. The tightness in his shoulders loosened. His heartbeat, which often felt racing in the mornings, slowed into a calm, steady rhythm. He realized how much of his daily stress came from constant overstimulation, from screens, notifications, and tasks piling up without pause. Just by being present in nature, he could feel his body and mind releasing some of that accumulated pressure. Japanese studies confirm these effects. Spending even 2 hours in a forest has been shown to lower cortisol, improve immune function, and boost mental clarity. Scientists in Japan found that people who practiced Shinrin-yoku regularly experienced less anxiety, better sleep, and improved mood. Caleb was beginning to feel those benefits firsthand. He stopped by a small pond, watching sunlight glint on the rippling water. For the first time in months, he wasn't thinking about what he had to do next. He was simply here, fully aware of the present moment. The realization struck him: energy isn't just about sleep or coffee. It's about restoring a natural balance, letting the body and mind reconnect with life outside the digital chaos. Caleb spent nearly an hour walking through the park, breathing deeply, and noticing the smallest details: the color of moss, the pattern of bark, the sound of wind through the leaves. By the end, he felt lighter, calmer, and more centered. Nature had reset him in a way he hadn't imagined possible. With the mental clarity and calm restored by Shinrin-yoku, Caleb was now ready to explore the final practice, Inemuri, the strategic nap that would teach him how to recharge his energy efficiently throughout the day. After a few days of practicing Seijaku and Shinrin-yoku, Caleb felt lighter and more focused, but he still struggled with midday crashes. Dr. Yuki explained that this was normal and introduced him to the third practice, Inemuri, the art of strategic napping. In Japan, she said, short naps are not lazy. They are a respected way to restore energy. Business people, students, and even factory workers use them to recharge. The key is timing and duration, 10 to 20 minutes, not hours. Long naps can make you groggy, but short naps reset the brain and improve alertness, memory, and creativity. Caleb raised an eyebrow. That seems too simple. Dr. Yuki smiled. It is simple but powerful. Think of it as giving your brain a reboot. You don't need to empty your schedule, just find a safe moment to rest. Let me show you how. She instructed him to lie down in a quiet room, dim the lights, and set a timer for 15 minutes. No phone, no distractions, no checking emails. Caleb felt strange at first. He was used to powering through fatigue, not surrendering to it. But as he settled, he noticed the weight of his body sinking into the mattress, the tension in his shoulders softening. His mind resisted at first, jumping to to-do lists and work worries, but he reminded himself of Dr. Yuki's words. This was not laziness. This was intentional restoration. Slowly, his thoughts quieted, and he drifted into a light, restful state. 15 minutes later, the timer buzzed softly. Caleb opened his eyes and blinked, surprised by how alert he felt. "Wow," he said, sitting up. "I feel awake. Clear. I didn't expect that." "That is Inemuri," Dr. Yuki replied. "A brief, deliberate nap can do more for your energy than a double espresso, without the crash. Over time, it teaches your body to recover efficiently and helps you maintain focus for longer periods during the day." Caleb realized something important. The combination of Seijaku, Shinrin-yoku, and Inemuri was starting to transform how he used his energy. Each practice targeted a different aspect of rest, yet together, they created a rhythm that felt natural and sustainable. With all three practices learned, Caleb was ready to enter the practice period. A few weeks dedicated to integrating Seijaku, Shinrin-yoku, and Inemuri into his daily life, testing the system and discovering how much energy he could actually regain. Caleb's first week of practicing Seijaku, Shinrin-yoku, and Inemuri was harder than he expected. He had learned the concepts, but putting them into daily life was a different challenge entirely. Mornings still came with groggy resistance, and he often found himself reaching for his phone the moment he woke up, forgetting the Seijaku instructions. During Seijaku, he struggled to quiet his racing thoughts. Emails, deadlines, and personal worries kept barging in, making 10 minutes of stillness feel like an eternity. He wanted to give up, thinking, maybe this isn't for me. But he remembered Dr. Yuki's words. It's normal for the mind to resist at first. Persistence, not perfection, is what mattered. Shinrin-yoku, too, tested his patience. Walking slowly through the park without multitasking felt unnatural. His brain wanted constant stimulation. He would glance at his watch, worried about errands and meetings. Yet, even in those short moments of mindfulness, he noticed subtle shifts. A soft breeze, sunlight filtering through the leaves, birdsong that hadn't registered before. It wasn't dramatic, but it was enough to hint at the benefits waiting for him. Inemuri posed its own challenges. Sitting or lying down for a 15-minute nap felt almost impossible. He worried he would sleep too long or wake up groggy. Often, he fidgeted, checking the timer, his mind impatient to move on. Yet, a few times, he managed to settle into the nap properly. When he did, he felt brief but remarkable bursts of alertness and clarity, a taste of what could be achieved if he persisted. Emotionally, the first week was exhausting. Caleb questioned his ability to stick with the program. He felt frustration, guilt, and impatience. He wanted fast results, not gradual change. But there was also a quiet curiosity growing inside him, a recognition that these small, uncomfortable attempts were the first step toward something bigger. By the end of the week, he began noticing tiny differences. His mind was slightly less chaotic in the mornings. Walks in the park felt a little more calming. Even brief naps seemed to reset him better than coffee. These small indicators were enough to keep him going, even though progress felt slow. As Caleb moved into the second week, he was on the verge of his first small victories, a hint that consistency could start to transform these practices from awkward attempts into real energy-restoring habits. By the start of the second week, Caleb began to notice small but meaningful changes. Mornings were no longer a blur of fatigue and irritation. After 10 minutes of Seijaku, he felt a quiet alertness that allowed him to start the day with more focus. The racing thoughts that had dominated his mind were less insistent, and he found himself approaching tasks with a little more patience. Walks in the park during Shinrin-yoku became more enjoyable. He noticed details he had previously ignored: the subtle sway of branches in the wind, the intricate patterns of moss, the distant chatter of birds. These moments, though brief, gave him a sense of calm and presence he hadn't experienced in years. Each walk left him refreshed, almost as if his mind had been decluttered for a short while. In Inemuri, the strategic naps also started to show results. Caleb no longer feared feeling groggy afterward. 15 minutes of rest in the early afternoon left him alert and energized, ready to tackle the rest of his day without relying on caffeine or forcing himself through exhaustion. Even small doses of these naps gave him clarity and restored a sense of balance. The improvements weren't just physical, they were emotional. His relationship with Clarice began to shift subtly. Dinner conversations became more engaged, he laughed more easily, and they shared quiet moments together without the constant distraction of phones or work concerns. She noticed that he was calmer, more present, and more emotionally available. Caleb realized that the energy he was regaining wasn't just for work or himself, it was for the people he loved. He also became aware of a subtle decrease in anxiety. The constant mental noise that had previously kept him on edge was quieter. He still had challenges to face, but he was approaching them with a steadier mind and a little more resilience. Each small victory reinforced his motivation to continue the practices, even when life got busy. By the end of the second week, the benefits were clear but still gradual. Caleb could see a path forward where energy, presence, and focus weren't impossible ideals. They were achievable through deliberate action. He felt encouraged, motivated, and curious to see how much further he could go. As he entered week 3, Caleb was about to uncover a major insight, an understanding that would finally help him unlock sustained energy and a deeper connection to life itself. By the 3rd week, Caleb began to notice something profound. The fatigue that had weighed on him for years wasn't just about long hours or stress. It came from resisting what his body and mind truly needed. He realized that his constant busyness, avoidance of quiet, and neglect of rest had built a cycle of exhaustion that no amount of coffee or willpower could break. During his morning Seijaku sessions, he finally felt the brain settle. Thoughts would still appear, but they no longer demanded immediate attention. He could observe them, let them drift away, and remain grounded in the present moment. The 10 minutes of active stillness were now rejuvenating, not frustrating. Walks in the park during Shinrin-yoku became more than a simple routine. They were restorative rituals. Caleb noticed how nature seemed to speak to him through subtle cues, the sway of branches, birdsong, even the earthy scent of the forest floor. He understood that giving his senses permission to fully engage with the environment allowed his nervous system to calm, his mind to reset, and his energy to replenish naturally. Strategic naps, Inemuri, had evolved from awkward attempts to essential tools. 15 minutes of focused rest no longer felt indulgent. They were scientifically backed energy resets that made afternoons productive rather than sluggish. Caleb realized that by giving his body exactly what it needed, silence, nature, and brief restorative breaks, he could reverse the fatigue that had seemed permanent. Science supported what he was feeling. Studies on mindfulness, nature therapy, and short naps confirmed that these practices reduce stress hormones, improve cognitive function, and enhance emotional well-being. Caleb finally understood that energy isn't something you chase with stimulants. It's something you restore intentionally. Emotionally, this insight was liberating. He no longer felt defeated by exhaustion. Instead, he felt empowered, curious, and deeply connected to his own rhythms. He understood that fatigue wasn't a flaw. It was a signal that he needed to align with life's natural pace rather than fight against it. With this understanding, Caleb was ready to fully integrate the practices, and life-changing results began to emerge. Energy returned, relationships improved, and a sense of balance replaced the constant burnout that had once defined his days. 4 months had passed since Caleb first met Dr. Yuki. In that time, his life had changed in ways he never imagined. He was no longer dragging himself through days, relying on coffee or sheer willpower to survive. His mornings began with Seijaku, afternoons included mindful walks in the park, and strategic naps kept his energy steady throughout the day. He felt alert, focused, and fully present. His relationship with Clarice had transformed too. Arguments that once stemmed from his irritability or fatigue had disappeared. Conversations were calmer, laughter more frequent, and their connection deeper than it had been in years. She noticed his patience and presence, and he noticed her appreciation and renewed warmth. Together, they were building a partnership that felt lighter and more joyful. One morning, the moment that truly captured the change came unexpectedly. Clarice handed Caleb a small envelope, her eyes sparkling with excitement. Inside was a pregnancy test, positive. For a moment, Caleb just stared, overwhelmed, not with exhaustion, but with pure joy. Tears welled up as he realized that the energy he had regained wasn't just for work or himself. It was for this new chapter of life, for the family they were about to start. He felt a profound sense of readiness. Fatherhood had once seemed like another source of stress he might not have the strength to handle. Now, he felt fully equipped, mentally and emotionally, to embrace it. His energy wasn't just physical, it was emotional resilience, clarity of thought, and the presence required to participate fully in life's moments. Caleb reflected on the journey, the struggles of the first week, the subtle shifts of the second, the epiphany of the third, and realized that transformation had come from simple, deliberate practices. Seijaku, Shinrin-yoku, and Inemuri had not only restored his energy but had reshaped his relationship with life itself. He hugged Clarice, a mix of relief, excitement, and gratitude filling him. This wasn't just a milestone in his health, it was a turning point in his life. Everything he had learned, every small effort, every uncomfortable moment of resistance, had led to this day. With energy restored, relationships healed, and a future full of possibility, Caleb's story demonstrates what's achievable when you give your mind and body the rest and restoration they truly need. And now, it's your turn to start your journey. By now, you've followed Caleb's journey from exhaustion to vitality, and it's clear that his transformation wasn't magic. It was methodical, practical, and achievable. The three concepts he learned from Dr. Yuki, Seijaku, Shinrin-yoku, and Inemuri, are tools you can start using today. Seijaku, or active stillness, is about giving your mind a break without completely stopping. Spend 10 minutes each morning focusing on your breath, observing thoughts without judgment, and letting mental clutter settle. You don't have to empty your mind completely, just notice the noise and allow it to quiet naturally. Shinrin-yoku, or forest bathing, reconnects you with nature. Take slow, mindful walks in a park, forest, or even a garden. Pay attention to the sights, sounds, and scents around you. Let your senses engage fully. Even short sessions, 20 to 30 minutes, can reduce stress, boost your mood, and recharge your energy in a way screens and caffeine never will. Inemuri, the strategic nap, teaches your body to restore efficiently. Find a quiet space, dim the lights, and rest for 10 to 20 minutes. Avoid phones, work, or distractions. Short, deliberate naps reset your brain, improve focus, and leave you energized for the rest of the day. These three practices work together to rebuild energy, clarity, and emotional resilience. They aren't complicated, but consistency is key. Caleb's results didn't happen overnight. They came from daily effort, persistence, and allowing his body and mind to give themselves the rest they needed. Now it's your turn. Start small. Try one practice each day, or pick one to integrate into your routine and notice the difference. Share your experiences in the comments so others can learn from your journey. If you found this story valuable, consider sharing it with friends or family who might also benefit. Don't forget to subscribe for more strategies that help you live a more energized, focused, and balanced life. Remember, the goal isn't just more energy. It's a life where you feel present, connected, and fully alive. Caleb's story shows what's possible when you honor your mind, body, and environment. Your journey can start today with small, deliberate steps that add up to lasting change. Take a moment now, commit to one practice, and see how it transforms your energy, your relationships, and your life, just as Caleb discovered.